Hello, in today's video I'm going to go over an example of IOA. In my experience, this has been something that's kind of given some students some trouble, but I think once you practice it and hopefully watch a couple examples, you will have better luck with it on throughout the course, and if it is to pop up on a test or a quiz, hopefully you'll be a little bit better prepared. Okay, so this is just an example I came up with. It says, Sally has been engaging in a screaming behavior. Her behavior team would like to develop an intervention that would help to decrease this behavior. They have completed all of the necessary steps prior to observation and are now ready to begin observing. They have decided to do interval recording. They have split their time up into 10 intervals and have 2 observers, Observer A and Observer B. Observer A recorded instances of screaming behavior in intervals 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, and 10. Observer B recorded instances of screaming behavior in intervals 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10. What is the total agreement, occurrence agreement, and non-occurrence agreement? So with any of the help videos, I would suggest pausing and trying to work through the problem yourself before. There's no grade given for any of these, so it would really be in your best interest to try to work it out, just so you can kind of see where you're at and make sure you know exactly what you need help with. Also, if hopefully this goes without saying, but if you have not read the chapter or listened to the lecture, I would definitely do that first. With all help videos, it's really just meant to build off of what you've learned in class. It's not really meant to teach you anything new. Okay, so let's get started. So I did 3 separate tables just to make sure everything is clear and concise and doesn't get too messy. But it also works sometimes to just do one table and write different notes on it. So whatever works for you is good. So the first thing we want to do, if you were to work out a problem like this on your own, I would suggest drawing out a chart, just something simple like this that has the observers and the intervals and helps you see your work. So you would want to go through and mark all the intervals that have occurrences of the behavior. So for observer A, that is in intervals 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, and 10. I'm just going to use plus and minuses because that's easier for me to put in, but whatever works for you, again, is good. And then observer B has them in intervals 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10. And so then the other ones would be non-occurrences, so we'll fill those in. And once we do that, I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. And there we go. You may have noticed I've already put them in for the other tables. I just didn't want you guys to have to sit and watch me do all of that. But it's the same information for all 3 tables. So first we're going to do total agreement. So total agreement is, let me double check. So it's all agreement intervals divided by total intervals. So for this one, it's going to look like, I did 10 because that's easy. So the total intervals are going to be 10. That's all the intervals you had in the whole observation period. So now we're going to go through and find all agreement intervals. So I'm going to use a highlighter so it's easier to see. I'll use yellow for this. So we're going to go through each one and find any intervals in which the 2 observers agreed. That can be either occurrence or non-occurrence as long as they both agreed. So in interval 1, we do have agreement. It's non-occurrence. In interval 2, we do not have agreement. Interval 3, we do not have agreement. Interval 4, we do have agreement. Interval 5, we have agreement. Interval 6, we do not. Interval 7, we do not. Interval 8, we do. Interval 9, we do. And then interval 10, we do. So we're going to go back through and count the ones in which we have agreement. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 intervals with agreement out of 10 total intervals, and that's going to look like 60% total agreement. I believe if something like this were to come up on a quiz or a test, Dr. D would be okay leaving it in fraction form, but just for the sake of the example, I'm going to go ahead and put them in percents. Obviously, whatever she wants you to do would be best. Yeah, so you'll just have to see what she asks of you. Okay, so that's how we find the total agreement. Next, we're going to find the occurrence agreement. An occurrence agreement is, let me double check my notes, it is agreement on occurrences. I should say intervals with agreement on occurrences, spell it right, divided by any interval with at least one occurrence. So I think these are the ones that maybe give people a little bit more trouble because the wording can be a little bit confusing, but once we go through it, I think it will make more sense. So first we'll find our denominator. So that's gonna mean any interval where either one, observer A, observer B, or both had an instance of occurrence. In this case, it'd be an occurrence of screaming behavior. So I'm gonna get my highlighter again. So we'll go through interval 1, nobody had an instance of occurrence. Interval 2, observer A did. In interval 3, observer B did. Interval 4, they both did. Interval 5, they both did. Interval 6, observer B did. Oops. Interval 7, observer A did. In interval 8, neither one did, so that would not count. Interval 9, they both did, and interval 10, they both did. So we're going to go back through and count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 intervals in which at least one of the observers had an instance of occurrence of screaming behavior. Okay, so out of those 8 intervals, we're going to go through, I'm going to do another color just so it's a little bit more clear. And we're going to count the ones in which they agreed on the occurrence. So interval 2, only 1 did. In interval 3, only 1. Interval 4, they both marked occurrence. Interval 5, they both marked occurrence. Interval 6, they did not. Interval 7, they did not. And then in interval 9 and 10, they both marked occurrence. Okay, so again, we're going to go back and count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 intervals in which they both agreed that there was occurrence of screaming behavior. So we have 4 out of 8. And again, I'm going to put that into a percent, and that's going to be 50% occurrence agreement. All right, and so a non-occurrence agreement is a similar pattern, only this time we're looking at non-occurrence. So we have intervals with agreement on non-occurrence divided by any interval with at least one non-occurrence. Okay, so that looks like we're going to go back through. We'll find our denominator first. So I'm going to do the highlighter again. And this time we're looking for any interval that has non-occurrence. So interval 1, they both have it. Interval 2, observer B has it. Interval 3, observer A has it. Interval 4 and 5, neither one. Interval 6, one has it. Interval 7, one has it. Interval 8, they both have it. And in interval 9 and 10, neither one. So now we're going to go through and count that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 intervals with at least one non-occurrence of screaming behavior. Okay, so now we're going to go through and count all the ones where they have agreement. So I'm going to get another different color. So we'll start with interval 1. They both agreed on non-occurrence. Interval 2, they did not agree. Interval 3, they did not agree. Interval 6, they did not agree. Interval 7, they did not agree, but interval 8, they did. So this one is a little bit smaller. We only have 2 agreement intervals out of 6. And then the percentage for that would be 33%. So yeah, that is how you find the different agreements. We have total, occurrence, and non-occurrence. And again, any way that works for you is, as long as you can get to the right answer, should be fine. This is just what worked for me. I think the color coding helps a little bit. I believe your other peer TA, Vivian, is also going to do an example of IOA, so she may be able to show you a way that works better for you. But I just want to go through how I would solve it, and hopefully that helps. And as always, if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to any of your other peer TAs, drop it in their help sessions, whatever you need. Thank you. Bye.